Hello everyone and welcome to Market Index Technical Analysis Insights. I'm Carl Capilingua and today's topic is the lithium price resurgence. Let's get stuck in. Earlier this week I wrote an article on Market Index calling that the bottom in lithium minerals prices was in. Lithium minerals prices have been rallying strongly since then, and I put out a tweet asking you what your favorite global lithium stocks were, and I'm going to do some technical analysis on lithium minerals prices first up today, and then those stocks as requested by you. And we're going to tackle them in three groups today. As you know, I'm a technical analyst, and we're going to look at the weakest through to the strongest trends, and that implies, therefore, in the middle, there's going to be some stocks potentially turning around. And then we'll close off today's video with how you can keep up with my latest technical analysis on Market Index. But before we get started, it's important to remember that this is a technical analysis only presentation. We will only be studying the charts of each of the commodities, stocks and ETFs in question with absolutely no regard to their fundamentals, because technical analysts like me believe that all available fundamental information is already embedded in the price. Hey, I'm sure there's plenty of resources out there on the internet for the fundamentals, and I invite you to go and investigate those. But for now, let's dive in. First up, we're going to look at lithium minerals prices. In particular, we'll review lithium carbonate, both futures and the SMM lithium carbonate index, lithium hydroxide battery grade, and then a couple of key spodumene contracts as well. Let's head over to my AMI broker screen where I've got the price of lithium carbonate for you. As I mentioned in that article I wrote earlier in the week, catch it on the Market Index website, I have been collecting the prices of 4 or 5 different lithium minerals by hand, manually, for about the last 18 months to 2 years. I did it originally because you just couldn't get this information for free, or certainly you couldn't get enough information to do any meaningful technical analysis on it. And what we're looking at here is the GFEX, or Guangzhou Futures Exchange Lithium Carbonate Futures. It's the January contract, which is the current benchmark month. And I have overlaid on it my technical analysis trend ribbons. We'll talk about how you can find out more about these trend ribbons at the end of today's video. Firstly, as a trend follower, I would prefer to see rising short and long-term uptrends before I'm looking to enter a particular trade to the long side. We're clearly not seeing that at the moment. We can see the short-term trend ribbon here is neutral at best. It's just actually about to cross to up, so that's a good sign that it's about to turn up, but the long-term trend is still very much set to the downside. My trend ribbons, I believe, tend to act as dynamic demand or supply depending on the situation. So when the price is above the trend ribbon tends to support the price, and when the price is below the trend ribbon tends to resist the price. So in theory, therefore, the short-term trend ribbon is potentially supportive, but the big problem here is that long-term trend ribbon possibly will come into play in the not too distant future in terms of price and impede further upside price action. The price action itself, and I always refer to price action in terms of peaks and troughs and their relative positioning, is rising peaks and troughs, which indicates demand reinforcement and supply removal. So on those pullbacks, demand comes in at higher levels, reinforcing itself, and that's giving us the higher troughs, and the higher peaks are caused by supply or excess supply being removed from the system, and that's typically your demand side case or bullish case scenario. Then I like to go to my candles, so just reminding you, starting at trend, starting at dynamic support and resistance, moving down to price action, and really the final, fine detail of my technical analysis model is using these Japanese candlesticks to give me very short-term signals as to who's in control of the price. White candles, downward pointing shadows, I say, indicates to me that the demand side is in control of the price. The bigger the white candle, the bigger the downward pointing shadow, obviously the bigger the control. And we're seeing some really good demand side candles coming in this week, certainly yesterday. Long white candle, and then a couple before that, I'll just highlight it for you here. That one there really kicked it off, and that occurred actually on the day that I happened to call that the bottom was in. And the reason why I called the bottom was in was that I was observing some of these traits of improving short-term trends, price action, and also candles prior to that. In terms of where I see potential supply coming up, 88.3 into possibly 93.9 is going to be a key supply zone, potential supply high zone. We really do need to watch the candles in there. If I start to see some of those supply side candles, for example, the black bodies and all those upward pointing shadows, I'd be concerned that we are finding supply in the market. Really, any trend up or down is really about probing until you see a response from the other side, and that's where I'd be looking for those supply side candles to be coming in, and also noting that that long-term downtrend ribbon and the dynamic supply to expect there is coming in around that zone. It's pretty straightforward. When you see sort of the pinks and the dark pinks, that's where we might see some supply come in. In terms of demand, I think 78.3, which was a previous point of supply, should act as now a point of demand, and then all the way down to 71.3. And anywhere you do see those big white candles, they demonstrate demand, and therefore they are in themselves points of demand. So overall, as I said, look, I've called the bottom is in here. Whether this is the beginning of the next bull market, that's too early to tell. I'll need to see what the interaction at that long-term downtrend ribbon looks like. If I see higher peaks, higher troughs in there, and continued strong demand-side candles, it'll make it easier for me to say that that is probably the case. I will say that typically, if we sort of think in terms of stock markets, when we have a rally of at least 20% from the low, we're usually saying that a bear market low is in. We've actually had greater than 20% rally from that 71.3. So look, interesting signs here, promising signs. Before I leave this chart, I'll just note that we've got some substantial volume in the system. Certainly the highest volume, I think, since all the way back in December, when I actually did call a turning point in the market there, to the day almost back on December 13. Go check the tweets. So that's impressive, and what that means to me is that we obviously high volume means high demand and high supply. So lots of buyers and lots of sellers. So don't ever think that rising volume means only demand. That's not the case. There are people or companies selling a great deal of lithium carbonate in this move, but they're doing so at higher and higher prices. So they're really sort of withholding their supply in terms of price, not necessarily in terms of quantity, but withholding their supply in terms of price. And that is the beginning of this journey of slight supply removal, and obviously it indicates that there is substantial demand in place because high volume equals high buying. So very interesting chart here on lithium carbonate futures. If we head to the lithium carbonate index, this one moves far more slowly, as one would expect. It's more like the spot / contract price rather than the futures price, which tends to be more volatile. And I just want to show you this one, so I wanted to zoom out and show you the anatomy really of how long-term trends change. And a lot of people who follow me on my Twitter, where I do post these charts every night. So these charts you can't get anywhere else, and I post them every evening on my Twitter account. A lot of people think I'm a lithium bear because they've only been following me probably since the beginning of 2023, where I did pop up in various media outlets. You can Google those and say around here that the bull market in lithium was over. I was one of the first and only analysts to call that, and then probably somewhere around here, and it was fairly more apparent in the price, certainly that a new bear market had begun. And really all you've known in terms of my commentary since then is a bear market in lithium. And as a trend follower, there's been absolutely no reason for me to call otherwise. So it's not that I hate lithium stocks, it's just that I have a model and I always follow my model. But to be fair, if you had followed me up to this stage here, I was the biggest lithium bull for obvious reasons as well. Trends can change, and that's the message here. And but we will need to see some short-term movement up in that short-term trend ribbon. It needs to turn green. It's a very visual system I have here. It's a traffic light system, so typically green means go, and we're still seeing red on the screen, so make of that what you will. Heading to lithium hydroxide, typically you're taking lithium carbonate, so sort of your base or lowest common denominator material in the lithium battery supply chain, and you're processing it potentially into lithium hydroxide to then use in your batteries. And this one hasn't turned up yet, so this one's a long way behind. It had its first tick up in terms of price yesterday. That would be Wednesday, and that was the first uptick in 132 trading sessions. Get that in your head there, 132 trading sessions since somewhere in April. But hey, it has ticked up. So just sort of getting a feeling here that there is still a long way to go. If we move to the spodumene concentrate mineral here, and we're looking at the SMM index, we can see also we are in this potential bottom out phase. Huge bear market. I don't have as much data for this one, just haven't been collecting as long. But we can see, a substantial basing pattern between sort of August and current, and we are moving above that short-term trend, but the elephant in the room on that chart certainly is still the long-term downtrend ribbon. I'll just switch over to the line chart here because it's easier for you to see what's going on in the spodumene concentrate price here, and this is the 6% Australian reference price from S&P Global Platts, which is a very well-respected price provider. And we can actually see the most pronounced, I believe, of any of the charts, lithium minerals charts we've seen so far, upturn in prices, certainly trading above that short-term trend ribbon, which is turned up. It's about to go green. I have a little bit of a delay built into my system by defaults, but yeah, that will probably signal an uptrend in the not too distant future. There is no long-term downtrend here because I've only been collecting the price since December last year. The bottom line here is with price action turning up, rising peaks, rising troughs, and a pretty decent 2 to 3 month base pattern now. There is every chance we have seen the bottom in lithium minerals prices. Okay, let's change gears now and head over to lithium stocks and ETFs as selected by you. This is not the order we're going to do them in. This is simply letting you know what's coming up, so stay tuned. And no doubt there are stocks on that list that are going to be very appealing for you to see my analysis on, and there are probably stocks that aren't on that list. So this list is compiled as a result of a tweet I put out earlier in the week asking you for your favourite global lithium stocks, and this is the response that I got. If there are stocks not on that list, hey, hit me up on Twitter and maybe we'll do a volume 2 of this one and cover your favourite stock later on down the track. Obviously Australia, Canada, USA and Asia are where the major lithium stocks are. We're not going to cover them in that order. We're going to cover them in order from their weakest trends to their strongest uptrends. So stay tuned at the end to find the very few lithium stocks that are in very strong uptrends at this point in time. And for this analysis, we're going to head over to my trading view window where I have queued up for you the first of the downtrends stocks, and we're going to do these in alphabetical order. So we're kicking off with 5E Advanced Materials over here in Australia, where of course I'm recording this video today. And I can do these very quickly. So we're going to breeze through, I think, stocks where really I'm not seeing any signs of demand side control, let alone demand side control coming in to the price action. I've got short-term downtrend, long-term downtrend. I don't have higher peaks and higher troughs, and the candles are indeterminate really at this stage. So I'm sorry, 5E Advanced Materials lovers. There's nothing personal here. I'm absolutely methodical in my approach. There's just nothing in this chart that suggests to me that en masse investors are trying to get into this one, and investors who have the stock are holding onto it and not letting go unless they're being compensated by higher and higher prices. Let's go to the second one, which is AGY, Argosy Minerals. That's also another ASX listed stock, and as you can see, they're pretty similar situation, which I guess begs the question, well, when will they start to look good? And of course, we're going to move up the food chain in terms of stocks that are exhibiting increasing signs of demand side control. But we want to see some nice candles come in. Those demand side candles I talked about earlier, white candles, downward pointing shadows, bigger the better. We want to see some volume come in. I always say volume's a little bit like the volume knob on your stereo when it's turned down low, like we're seeing on screen here. Nobody can hear what's going on in their stock, but when there's lots of volume coming in, it's like turning up the volume on your stereo. People can hear it across the road. They come in, they investigate, they want to join the party. Price action volume, very important. I want to see rising peaks and rising troughs come in. I want to see those trend ribbons turn around. I want to see prices above trend ribbons. We're certainly not there yet on AGY. It doesn't mean we won't be there next time we do this analysis, but there is very little interest from me on this one. The next one we're going to look at, and I'm doing these in alphabetical order, and I will tell you what countries they are from as we go, is ATLX, and this is one listed in the United States. And it actually has some upside price action in the recent past, but back currently into I'm going to call it a short-term downtrend at the end there, and obviously it's still a very, very powerful, well-established long-term downtrend. We can see here how my long-term trend ribbon works in terms of pushing that price back down when we do have an interaction in that long-term downtrend. And really it's only until, as we'll see later on when we get to turnaround setups, when that long-term trend starts to change, we start to have some very serious interactions with it, that I start to become more optimistic. I think what's this one has going for it, though, is a significant increase in volume over the last couple of months or so, and often that can be associated with improving price action down the track. We're actually seeing some upside volatility, at least there's some sort of pulse here. So, look, one potentially to keep an eye on, but despite the move up in lithium minerals we discussed earlier, still really very little of a heartbeat over here just yet. So we're going to keep moving to the next one, which is our first Canadian stock today, BRW, which is Brunswick Exploration. And again, it has had some upside volatility in the recent past, but look, immediately speaking, not a lot of interest there. And when I say not a lot of interest, that's proven in the lack of substantial volume. Also, long-term uptrend is still a major issue here, and the price action is still very much set to the falling peaks and falling troughs. Candles are uninspiring. A couple of little white candles there at the end, not enough to really get any more interest from me. Next Canadian stock today is going to be Critical Elements Lithium Corporation. CRE is the ticker code. If you're unsure which one I'm talking about, you can see obviously up the top here the name as well, and where it's listed over here. Another one, I'm going to go ditto, won't spend too much time on this one. Some volume there, I guess that's a positive, a little bit of a build-up, but really no price action and no indication in those candles that the demand side is active at all in this chart. And once again, we can see just how powerful my long-term trend ribbon is at providing what I call this concept of dynamic supply in the market, a point where we do see any rallies begin to be shut down. Let's go to the next one, which is an over-the-counter stock, CYDVF. That's a long ticker code, Century Lithium Corporation in the United States. I'm going to go pretty much ditto on the last one there. Maybe there's a little bit of volume coming in, as you can see at the end, but it's still fairly muted, and with some pretty terrible price action actually, and some candles, and obviously the long-term trend ribbon doing its job. Very little interest from me. We will, I think, need to pick up the pace here, because we're not really seeing for me the signs that we need to spend any more attention on these at this point in time. Now, as the trends change, we'll give them more attention, but I don't think we need to spend much more time on Frontier Lithium over there on the TSX. Bringing it back to Australia now, IGO Limited, which is actually a lithium and a nickel stock, but these guys own the Green Bushes lithium mine, which is about 250 clicks sort of south east from where I'm sitting here in Perth, Western Australia, and it is Australia's, sorry, not just Australia's, it's the world's biggest and lowest cost hard rock lithium mine. So that's the spodumene that they're producing down there. Not doing them much good at this point in time. We're seeing short and long-term downtrends. We're not seeing inspiring price action at all. We've still got sort of mixed peaks and troughs, but maybe trending towards lower peaks and lower troughs, and very little volume, very little interest coming to this. And nothing would excite me more to see a big white candle here on some big volume and say that the party is beginning again on IGO. But I just can't see it at this stage. And that's it's important that I make this point that my brand of technical analysis, which is trend following, get that word, trend following, is very much reactionary. I do not prognosticate, because I firmly believe that nobody can predict the future, so why bother trying? And I won't be able to tell the trend has changed until I see some of these signs I've talked about. Until then, I'm, as I said, not interested, and I'm not interested in mineral resources either, on the basis that, even with this uptick in lithium prices this week, we've seen very little interest coming in from the market. Plenty of volume on this one, but for other reasons, specific to what's been happening with the company recently. And I'll let you do your own research on that, but with very well established short and long-term downtrends here, and with those trend ribbons really doing an excellent job of keeping prices down, I don't have any interest in mineral resources at this point in time, and you might also take note that there's an iron ore element at play here as well. There's also a big iron ore producer. Heading to a stock that was one of the most popular stocks, actually, Patriot Battery Metals. And we're going to do the ASX listing. I do know it is dual listed, or it's listed in a couple of different other places. And as popular as it is, and it's also quite highly regarded by many brokers as well who have buy recommendations on it to keep track of those. It just looks terrible in terms of its demand-supply dynamics. That is, there just looks to be so much more supply in the market for this stock than there is demand. So despite all the brokers, despite all of you loving it so much, we're just lacking that demand-side impetus and/or the supply side being confident enough to withdraw from offering stock into the market to keep pushing prices down. There's really no interest for me there on Patriot Battery Metals, even though it is the most popular stock in this list today. Heading back to the US now with, actually I'm not going to bother pronouncing this one, let's just call it SQM. And we're seeing, pretty average price action candles and trends. A little bit of volume coming in and, to be fair, a little bit of an uptick last night. But look at last night's candle. Even in that push higher, the supply side came in and took advantage of those higher prices and supplied into the market substantial volume. So yes, substantial buying probably at the start of the session, but that high volume indicates substantial supply as well. And that's the part of the equation that impacted most on price. Okay, rounding out this list of downtrends, I've probably depressed the hell out of you all by now, but don't worry, it can only, by definition, get better from here, is Winsome Resources, and there's hardly a heartbeat there. Again, I will remind you that's okay, because we're going to go to some charts now where there is more than just a heartbeat. We're going to kick off with our first ETF, actually, the Global X ACDC ETF, which combines a bunch of battery metal type companies. And it's our first short-term uptrend, isn't it? It's our first light green short-term trend ribbon that we've seen so far, and that indicates that demand is in control of the price in the short term. We're seeing some higher peaks and higher troughs, but I do note these peaks and troughs are significantly overlapping, and that's not ideal. We'd like to see some separation between, I always say, last trough and second from last peak. I'll let you think about that for a while, but that gives us an indication that we have strong demand side control. So on the trough to peak movements, they're very large, very powerful, and on the responding peak to trough movements, they're very shallow. So that's just, think about that. It's indicating an excess of demand in the system. Candles here are very mixed, actually. In fact, we're seeing something going up on black candles, which is, I say, the stock is kind of going up in spite of itself. Volume, not bad, but not great. And we are being impeded by the long-term downtrend ribbon. We have a start here. I'd need to see it trade above the long-term trend ribbon. I need that long-term trend ribbon to at least go amber. I don't need it to be green, but it does need to be at least amber to give me that sort of minimum indication that in the long term, that demand side is starting to take control also. Look, certainly one I think you can keep an eye on, but it's not one that I'd be looking to take any further action on just at this point in time. We're going to the US now, and one of the biggest lithium producers in the world, in Albemarle. And actually a pretty impressive little short-term uptrend there. We do have some interaction with the long-term trend ribbon, and that long-term trend ribbon has turned to amber, so we're in that neutral phase. You can see that you really haven't wanted to mess with that long-term trend ribbon prior to this. What I typically want to see in these scenarios is ideally the price trades above the long-term trend ribbon. That would be ideal, but we see some sort of interaction or supply side response at the long-term trend ribbon. So like a higher trough in there, some nice white candles in there, really signaling that the supply that has been so prevalent in that ribbon for so long actually has dissipated or is no longer in control. And I actually would say we're seeing that. We're seeing a little bit of a trough being set right at the end there. Last night's candle is far from inspiring though, and that is a little bit disconcerting. But I do think there's enough evidence of a turnaround in play here to certainly keep a close eye on Albemarle. Decent base through here. I'd say we'd like to see a little bit more volume coming in to tell us that, yes, the interest has arrived. The big fund managers are actually starting to pile money back into this lithium theme. And with that money coming in, the supply side is backing away, and therefore price is starting to demonstrate the new imbalance between demand and supply. Certainly a warm one I think that you can keep an eye on. Let's head over to ATC, which is back in Australia here. Altech Batteries. Actually, very, very decent rally here. Definitely one I would call a turnaround play. Not a continuation, because a continuation you're going to see double greens on the trend ribbons. What I'll tell you about volume, when that volume comes in, you have the ability, at least you've got a chance of upside price movement. Today's candle, it's a live candle, so I would discount it. But looking up to yesterday's candle, second and last candle, still looks like a very strong demand side showing here, and good price action in terms of, as I said, that sort of last trough, second from last peak, and the candles are still pretty good. Nothing goes up in a straight line. We're seeing a little bit of a reaction today, but otherwise certainly one where I do feel that in the short and I'm going to go so far as to say the medium term, the demand side is in control. Okay, this is going to be our first Asian stock today. We're heading to Hong Kong now to look at 1772, which is Ganfeng Lithium Corporation. And this one actually looks very interesting to me. So that last candle there, which is the 13th of November candle, so that's yesterday. We don't have a live candle yet, so that's good. We can do all our analysis based upon that candle. I only analyse closed candles. I'm seeing volume. I'm seeing a base pattern. I'm seeing upside volatility on that volume. We have a pulse here, we have some interest. Price action looks pretty decent, generally rising peaks and rising troughs, a little bit of overlap there, but nothing too sinister. And some decent candles coming in recently, certainly one there. And yesterday's candle, I think actually is very impressive with that downward pointing shadow, importantly, into that long-term trend ribbon. And as I said, when we see that long-term trend ribbon stop acting as that zone of dynamic supply, and here's the important bit, start acting as dynamic demand, that's when I start to get really interested. So definitely qualifies as what I call a turnaround setup, and therefore I think deserves some further attention from here. It's up to you what you do, of course, but it's beyond my radar at least. Let's head over to GLN back here in Australia. This is Galan Lithium. Okay, the reason why this one made the list is it's technically a short-term uptrend in that the short-term ribbon has signalled up. I know it's going back to amber, but we're still trading above it. So let's tentatively call it tentatively say the short-term uptrend is still in place. It's still clearly a long-term downtrend, but it's not the double negative, is it? So that's why it made it into this list. And I think we can actually keep moving now on the basis that we understand how I'm doing this analysis now, and when we need to stop and pay further attention. This one had a big run-up and then turned around on the back of the US election result. I think there are some fundamentals there with a potential project that may or may not be more likely to go ahead or not, and that's probably caused that decline there. What I can say here is that it's not double down, so therefore by definition it's sort of in the middle. If it can start to get some white candles and some nice price action coming in, get back above a short-term trend ribbon, it might look interesting because it did have the bones of a pretty solid rally before that. That's Ioneer, that's another Aussie stock. Heading back to the USA now, we're going to Lithium Americas Corporation, and certainly a pulse here, not all that different from the Albemarle chart. I'm going to say the Albemarle chart's showing some stronger signs of demand side control coming in, but this one's not terrible at all, and I do like the base pattern. I certainly like the increased volume here. There is some interest. International funds are starting to look at some of these US lithium stocks again, so as I said before, probably worth being back on your radar. Heading back to Australia again, if you're wondering why these stocks are in this list, they are requested by you. They're not selected by me. I'm just simply honouring my agreement with you on Twitter to analyse these stocks for you. Certainly a pulse here. That's a good start. The candles more recently, a little bit disappointing, possibly going to pull back to around maybe that short-term uptrend ribbon, which tends or should tend to act as dynamic demand when the price is above it. Volume, there's some interest there, but it's probably one, given lacking the price action I like to see, and the candles I like to see does not require any further attention at this stage, but it might well be one that you would keep an eye on for some of those factors to change. Heading back to the USA now, we're going to go to another ETF, the Global X Lithium and Battery Technology ETF, and we're starting to see some of those moves in those bigger US stocks being borne out here. And look, a very decent chart in terms of turnaround play. We've moved above the long-term uptrend ribbon. It's obviously neutralised, and it appears, for all intents and purposes, for the last few weeks to be offering dynamic demand. Candles are fairly good. Disappointing last couple of nights considering lithium minerals prices are rallying, but certainly one I think you can keep an eye on. And just waiting for further strong signs of demand through those candles. I think white candles, lower shadows are the ones you're looking out for there. Heading back to Australia here and looking at LKE, Lake Resources, and it has got in this middle list simply because it's not double red, so I don't think we need to spend any more time on that. Hey, like I said, no fundamentals at all in this, so if you think Lake Resources is the most fantastic company in the world, that's fine. And no argument from me, but I would suggest there are very few people out there in the world that agree with you. And that's kind of the point of investing, isn't it? We can have the most absolutely valid opinion of a particular stock or a commodity or whatever it might be, but if nobody agrees with us, that thing ain't going up. Again, one that almost could have snuck into the double down list here in Lithium Ionic Corporation. This is another Canadian stock, but probably just getting into this list given that the short-term trend isn't quite down yet, and I'm going to say ditto on so many we've seen today that probably not requiring any further attention. Bringing it back to Liontown Resources, actually some half-decent signs here on Liontown Resources that the demand side is at least putting up a fight and probably has dragged itself to equilibrium at least. Short-term uptrend in place, long-term downtrend, of course, contrasting that, and we can see just how well the long-term downtrend has behaved in the past as an area of dynamic supply. And given that we want to be fairly cautious around that long-term downtrend ribbon, and we want to therefore see some of those positive signs or transitional signs that we talked about earlier on. Probably would like to see a little bit more volume here, but otherwise, even though the price action is a bit sideways, there's plenty of white candles out there. So one potentially to keep an eye on for some of those other boxes to be ticked down the track. Let's head over to Piedmont Lithium, and I've kind of made a little bit of a mistake there and clicked on the NASDAQ one because this one is also dual listed here in Australia and in the USA, and it probably won't really matter which chart we use, but again, a bit more of an equilibrium kind of setup here where we do have a short-term uptrend but still dealing with that long-term downtrend, and we can see how hard it is sometimes to deal with that long-term downtrend ribbon. It's one certainly I think warrants keeping an eye on, and it's the big price action, big move up. The upside volatility begets more upside volatility. It drags traders in, it gets people excited, and until you see that, you're probably just in wait-and-see mode here. So keep an eye on those big white candles. Bit of a volume push would be good, and then a resumption of higher peaks and higher troughs on PLL. Bringing it back to Australia, I guess in many ways staying in Australia on Pilbara Minerals here, very, very popular stock in Australia, and starting to show some signs here that it is trying to change its short-term downtrend. In fact, I argue that the short-term trend is up now, and it's trying to change its long-term downtrend. So we've got some interaction with the long-term downtrend ribbon. We would want to see a higher trough set in that ribbon, and that actually I think would make this one look quite interesting. This 320 to 340 has been a problem in the past. You can see here with the turnaround there. Rising peaks, rising troughs, a predominance of white candles, maybe lacking a little bit of volume though, but certainly one that I think you can keep an eye on to see if the technicals improve here. Going to SGML over there in the USA, Sigma Lithium Corporation, not as good probably as the Albemarle chart and the other US one, the Lithium Americas Corp, I think it was, that we saw earlier, but demonstrating some similarities in terms of short-term uptrend battling against the long-term downtrend. A little bit of volume last night, maybe a few half-decent candles coming in at the end there, but probably requiring further confirmation here before we get too excited. Going back to Canada now, and we're going to look at Standard Lithium Corporation, which actually is one of the few that is trading above its long-term downtrend ribbon here. Unfortunately, though, whilst that's a big positive, the recent price action is relatively bearish. Candles are not telling me that there's a great deal of demand side control there either. But hey, there is or has been some interest here. Certainly we're tracking some elevated volume there, and it wouldn't take much for me here to look very closely at this one again. So moving it back into higher peaks and higher troughs, some nice upside volatility, some white candles, and again this would come under some consideration. Back to Australia now with Sayona. Again, just doing these obviously within their groups, but within alphabetical order. So we're near the end of this middle list. A decent basing pattern here, a couple of months now at least. Price action very sideways. There is technically short-term uptrend, as you see the green ribbon there, but you can also see just how much of an issue sometimes this long-term downtrend ribbon can be. I'm going to say ditto on that. Let's see some upside price volatility, and it's going to start to look more interesting. The next one is Galan Lithium, which is, I've got to type in the serial number here, 02466, and it comes up that way. So we're heading to China now. And my guess is that this is probably a large component of that ETF we saw earlier on, because there's some consistent price action here. Above the long-term trend ribbon, long-term trend ribbon has neutralized. Actually a really impressive short-term uptrend in place there. The price action looks quite good here, and the candles aren't terrible, but a little bit disturbed by yesterday's candle. It is an indecision style candle with both upward and downward pointing shadows. And given, I guess, the bullishness that's come through from some of that lithium minerals pricing, it's perhaps a little disturbing that we're not seeing more of a follow through here. I definitely like the volume, and definitely, therefore, with it trading above the long-term trend ribbon, think you can keep a close eye on this one going forward. And to round out this list of in-betweeners, let's call them, back to Australia here for Wildcat Resources, and I don't think you get any more in-between than that one, isn't it? It's a kind of the picture of equilibrium at this point in time. And as an investor, you've got to ask, well, what do I want? Do I want equilibrium, or do I want strong demand-side control, or do I want strong supply-side control? We've certainly seen examples of strong supply-side control in that first list, equilibrium in the second list, but we're heading to a very, very short list of international lithium stocks that are showing demand side control. The first one I've got for you, and just purely in alphabetical order, there's only two in this list, is QTWO on the Canadian market there, Q2 Metals Corporation. And I put to you the first long-term uptrend we've seen in this entire list. Unfortunately, though, the short-term trend is beginning to waver, so we haven't quite got that win-win just yet. Price action is back to lower peaks and lower troughs. The candles are back to indeterminate. Look, yesterday's candle is a good start in terms of turning around that very short-term trend. If it starts to trade back above or stay above that short-term uptrend ribbon, maybe even put in a higher trough above it and sustain some white candles up there, it could start to look interesting again, probably through that sort of 120, 130 with some high closes might be interesting, but certainly, given the technicals here, deserves to be on radars. And last and absolutely not least is Vulcan Energy, an Australian stock here, and the second, obviously, company with a long-term uptrend in place, but I'm going to say arguably the best short-term uptrend we've seen, solid price action, and something we haven't seen a great deal of in this whole analysis is upside volatility, that intent from the demand side and also the intent from the supply side to hang on to their shares unless they're compensated by significantly higher prices. So I'm going to put to you that is the best looking global lithium stock purely on a technical analysis basis. All right, back to the presentation again, and we'll just close off today's discussion with a quick look at how you can continue to follow along with my technical analysis on market index. The first place I think you really want to go if you've struggled with some of the jargon and terminology of my method, the technical analysis method today, is my technical analysis for beginners and ChartWatch Primer, and it is quite a detailed article on why you might want to use technical analysis in your work, and my brand of technical analysis, which is trend following, and the intricacies of my technical model, including candlesticks, price action, trends, and all the stuff we talked about before. The second place you might want to go on a daily basis, I published, if you're an ASX investor, of course, I do publish my daily technical analysis scan, and you can take these lists and put them into a watch list on your favorite technical analysis platform and play along at home, as it were. And finally, if you're on Twitter, or X as Mr. Musk likes to call it now, you can follow me, and I'm putting up regular updates, not just lithium stocks, but stocks on many other commodities in economics and investing content. Also, each day, of course, I put up my lithium charts, those charts you can't get anywhere else. So that brings us to the end of today's video. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned for new ChartWatch Market Insights videos. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button and the subscribe button in the post below to stay notified of all of my future video updates. Apart from that, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. Hopefully you enjoyed the presentation. All the best for your investing until we catch up again. Bye-bye for now.